On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Clarence Williams III, a commanding presence in both film and television, passed away on June 4, 2021, at the age of 81 from colon cancer. His death was a natural one, yet it underscored a broader conversation about the erasure and resurgence of Black actors who shaped American media across decades. Known for his intensity, range, and iconic role as Linc Hayes in the 1960s series The Mod Squad, Williams symbolized a new era of television that began to reflect the complexity of America's racial landscape. Williams rose to fame during the Civil Rights era, portraying characters that defied stereotypes and embodied dignity and depth. His death, while not sudden, stirred a quiet reverence among fans and peers who recognized him as a trailblazer. At a time when Black actors often faced typecasting or limited visibility, Williams brought nuance and gravitas to every performance, whether in socially conscious dramas or stylized genre films. The immediate consequences of his passing were subtle but meaningful. Reflections in film retrospectives, tributes from fellow actors, and a renewed appreciation for his groundbreaking work. Though not a household name to all, within Hollywood and Black artistic communities, his influence was deeply felt. His death did not so much shift the trajectory of history as it reminded the world of the layered contributions of artists often overlooked in mainstream narratives. Williams's death did, in many ways, amplify his legend. In revisiting his work, such as his haunting performance in Tales from the Hood, or his role as Prince's father in Purple Rain, audiences rediscovered his ability to channel pain, strength, and complexity. His characters often mirrored the struggles of a generation fighting for identity and justice, offering insight into the era's social challenges. In contemplating Clarence Williams III's passing, we glimpse the universal truths of mortality and legacy. His career reflects the quiet power of persistence in a system often slow to change. Humanity's need to remember is evident in how we immortalize figures like him, through re-watching old episodes, teaching new generations about cultural pioneers, and celebrating their contributions in halls of fame and historical anthologies. Williams's legacy endures not in loud fanfare, but in the subtle, steady influence he had on the evolution of representation in American storytelling. Joan Vose, an American actress and former model, passed away on June 4, 2001 from heart failure at the age of 73. Her death, while natural and quiet, marked the passing of a figure emblematic of Hollywood's mid-century elegance, an era shaped by beauty, poise, and the studio system's golden touch. Though she never reached the star status of her contemporaries, Vose's career spanned film, television, and stage, offering a glimpse into the transitional period between classic and modern Hollywood. Vose began as a model for the Conover Agency and a dancer with the Rockettes before entering the film industry in the early 1950s. Her work with MGM and appearances in films like The Affairs of Dobie Gillis reflected the lighthearted and sometimes sanitized values of post-war America. Her image was consistent with the expectations of the era: demure, graceful, and inoffensive, a product of a time when women in Hollywood were often celebrated more for charm than agency. Her death did not cause global headlines, but it served as a quiet reminder of the many performers who helped build the entertainment industry's foundation. In the wake of her passing, film historians and fans of classic cinema revisited her performances, often overshadowed by larger stars, yet still vital in painting the full picture of American screen history. Joan Vos's passing symbolizes how fame can be fleeting, but contribution endures. Unlike the violent or politically charged deaths of more prominent historical figures, her departure was not a catalyst for change, but rather an invitation to remember the roles played by supporting artists, those who lent grace and professionalism to the projects they touched. In reflecting on her death, we're reminded that mortality equalizes all, regardless of fame. Yet our memory of individuals often depends not solely on their impact, but on the narratives we choose to preserve. Through Turner Classic Movies broadcasts, film archives, and fan retrospectives, Joan Vose is subtly immortalized. She exists within a collective cultural memory that values nostalgia, classicism, and the enduring charm of an era long gone. Her life and death ask us to consider how we value those who support rather than lead, and how memory can be shaped as much by affection as by acclaim. Through that lens, Vose remains quietly timeless. Georgann Johnson, a prolific character actress whose career spanned over 5 decades in television, film, and theater, died of natural causes on June 4, 2018 at the age of 91. Her passing marked the quiet close of a life devoted to performance, with her legacy embedded more subtly in the cultural fabric than in headlines. Known for her warm screen presence and versatility, Johnson reflected a generation of actresses who thrived within the ensemble-driven, character-rich storytelling of mid-20th century American entertainment. Johnson was perhaps best known for roles on popular TV shows like The Trials of Rosie O'Neill, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and appearances on Seinfeld and Jag. She also had a noteworthy role as the mother in Midnight Cowboy and performed on Broadway, working with figures like Henry Fonda. Her career reflected the evolving opportunities for women in the industry, beginning during the post-war boom in live television and continuing through the rise of feminist consciousness in the 1970s and beyond. Her death, peaceful and private, stands in contrast to the dramatic exits often associated with Hollywood legends. Yet, it is precisely this lack of spectacle that illuminates an important truth. The contributions of character actors are often enduring, even if not loudly celebrated. Johnson's passing drew quiet tributes from peers and fans, but did not significantly shift cultural or historical discourse. Still, it did remind audiences of the value of steadfast artistry and the subtle power of supporting roles in shaping narratives. Gorgon Johnson's legacy is preserved not in monuments or sweeping tributes, but in the continuity of craft. Her death invites reflection on how memory is built, not just through fame, but through accumulated moments of truth on stage and screen. In an era obsessed with celebrity, Johnson's enduring influence is a testament to quiet professionalism and emotional authenticity. Humanity's relationship with mortality, as seen through figures like Johnson, reveals an instinct to find meaning in every contribution, large or small. We commemorate such figures through reruns, theater programs, and fan discussions, anchoring them in our shared cultural memory. Gorgon Johnson may not have been a household name, but through decades of heartfelt performance, she became a familiar, comforting presence, immortalized in the roles that quietly defined an era. Sonny Tufts, a once prominent Hollywood actor of the 1940s, died on June 4, 1970, from natural causes related to alcohol-related health complications. Though not a household name today, Tufts' life and death reflected both the fleeting nature of fame and the challenges faced by actors navigating the shifting landscape of post-war Hollywood. Tufts rose to prominence during World War II when many leading men were off fighting overseas. With his tall stature, Ivy League background, and rugged charm, he quickly filled a void in romantic and heroic roles, starring in films like So Proudly We Hail and The Virginian. However, as the war ended and the film industry began to evolve, Tufts' career declined. His struggle with alcoholism became public, and his increasingly erratic behavior often overshadowed his earlier accomplishments. His death in 1970 at age 58 came quietly, without the media spectacle that often accompanies the passing of major stars. Yet in its own way, his decline and eventual death were emblematic of a broader issue within the entertainment industry: how actors, especially those typecast or pushed into the spotlight under unique circumstances, often struggled with identity and relevance once the spotlight faded. The pressure to maintain a public image, coupled with limited roles and personal demons, frequently led to troubled lives off-screen. The immediate aftermath of Tufts' passing saw little in the way of public mourning or retrospectives, highlighting how quickly Hollywood can move on from those who once lit up the screen. Yet his story serves as a cautionary tale about the costs of fame and the era's limited support systems for those who fell from grace. In the broader scope of history, Tufts' legacy is one of quiet impact. His films remain part of the Golden Age canon, and his life story has become a footnote in discussions about celebrity culture and the volatility of stardom. We remember figures like Sonny Tufts through archived films, studio histories, and the occasional pop culture reference, underscoring how memory often favors the dramatic, yet makes space for the faded. His death reminds us that mortality strips away fame's glitter, leaving behind the human story. In remembering Sonny Tufts, we confront how culture immortalizes some through myth, others through quiet remembrance, and all through the shared art they leave behind. Jack Guilford, a beloved American character actor known for his work in theater, film, and television, died of stomach cancer on June 4, 1990, at the age of 81. His death was natural, yet it marked the end of an era shaped by political resilience, creative expression, and a deep moral conscience. Guilford's life and passing embody the intersection of entertainment, activism, and the struggle for artistic integrity during some of America's most turbulent decades. Guilford was not just a performer. He was a principled man who stood firm against injustice. In the 1950s, during the height of the Red Scare, he and his wife, Madeleine Lee, were blacklisted by the House Un-American Activities Committee for their alleged communist ties. This period saw many artists silenced, careers destroyed, and lives upended by mere suspicion, an era where political fear often outweighed truth. Guilford's refusal to capitulate to fear underscored the values of free expression and resistance against authoritarian pressure. When he passed away in 1990, it was in a vastly different America, one that had by then largely condemned the McCarthyist tactics that once sidelined him. Yet Guilford never regained the full breadth of opportunities denied to him during his peak. His death served as a poignant reminder of the long-term consequences of political persecution, even in a country that prides itself on liberty. Though his death did not shake the world in the way a president's assassination might, it prompted a quiet reverence among fellow performers and political thinkers. He was remembered not only for his warm comic timing in films like Cocoon and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, but also for his courage in the face of ideological oppression. His passing underscored a generational shift, from the idealism and fear of the mid-20th century to a more reflective era that valued both art and accountability. Today, Guilford is immortalized through his enduring performances and his inclusion in the broader narrative of Hollywood's blacklist survivors. His story is retold in documentaries, books, and retrospectives that aim to preserve the memory of those who stood up for their beliefs. In this way, Jack Guilford's death not only closed a chapter, but helped frame a lesson: that integrity in art and life often outlives the institutions that try to suppress it. Stephen McNally, a versatile American actor best known for his portrayals of tough, often morally conflicted characters in mid-20th century film noir and westerns, died on June 4, 1994, of natural causes at the age of 82. His passing marked the quiet end of a career that flourished during Hollywood's golden age, a time when cinema shaped American identity, masculinity, and morality on the screen. McNally's death may not have triggered national mourning, but it invited reflection on an era where character actors played indispensable roles in shaping cinematic storytelling. Born Horace Vincent McNally, he began his career as a practicing lawyer before transitioning into acting in the 1940s. As he carved out a niche in noir classics like Criss Cross, 1949, and westerns such as Winchester 73, 1950, McNally often embodied the gray zone between hero and villain, a reflection of post-World War II America's evolving moral compass. The rise of anti-heroes in film mirrored societal tensions, disillusionment after war, the rise of Cold War paranoia, and shifting ideals around justice and power. McNally's characters, often tormented or duplicitous, captured the complexity of that time. His death in the mid-1990s came during a period of renewed interest in classic Hollywood, as film historians and cinephiles sought to preserve the legacy of the studio era. While his name was not as widely recognized as his contemporaries, McNally's passing reminded audiences of the foundational layers of cinema, the actors who carried narratives with quiet intensity, often without fanfare. There were no grand public spectacles surrounding his death, but there was an undercurrent of appreciation within film circles for his contributions to a transformative period in American storytelling. The way we remember Stephen McNally speaks volumes about how we process memory and celebrity. In the grand theater of history, not all performers are spotlighted equally, yet their influence lingers in the roles they played and the genres they helped define. McNally is commemorated through film retrospectives, genre studies, and the enduring presence of noir and Western archetypes that still echo in modern cinema. His death, like many in his profession, draws attention to the quieter corridors of cultural legacy, where art endures beyond fame and where memory finds form not in monuments, but in the flicker of film reels and the stories they continue to tell. Herb Reed, the founding member and last surviving original voice of the Platters, died of natural causes on June 4, 2012, at the age of 83 in Boston. His death marked the end of a vocal legacy that helped define American rhythm and blues and early rock and roll in the mid-20th century. Reed, a bass vocalist, was instrumental in shaping the smooth, romantic sound that made the Platters a global sensation with hits like Only You, The Great Pretender, and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Reed's passing was quiet, but symbolically powerful. It reflected the fading of a golden age in American music, a time when harmony groups gave voice to dreams, heartbreaks, and hopes in a rapidly changing post-war society. His era was one of burgeoning civil rights awareness, cultural integration, and the rise of African American performers in mainstream popular music. The Platters, one of the first black groups to gain acceptance with both black and white audiences, were trailblazers, and Reed's deep voice carried not just melody, but cultural significance. Though not violent or controversial, Reed's death reminded the world of the fragility of legacy in an industry often quick to forget its pioneers. In the immediate aftermath, tributes from fans and musicians poured in, recognizing his contribution not only to music, but to the broader cultural shifts of the 1950s and 60s. Reed had spent his later years defending the integrity of the Platters' name from unauthorized groups, showing his deep commitment to preserving history and authenticity. Reed's death did not shift the course of history in dramatic fashion, but it closed the chapter on one of America's first crossover music phenomena. His voice lives on in recordings that continue to echo through generations, embodying the elegance and passion of a bygone musical era. The way Herb Reed is remembered, through tribute concerts, archival footage, and the enduring presence of the platters in oldies playlists highlights humanity's need to commemorate voices that gave meaning to shared emotion. Through music, we immortalize figures like Reed not just for their fame, but for their ability to touch the universal longing for love, recognition, and harmony. His passing serves as a reminder that while mortality is certain, legacy, when nurtured with care and truth, can sing on forever. Sotyus Mustakas, the beloved Cypriot Greek actor known for his sharp comedic timing and magnetic stage presence, passed away on June 4, 2007, at the age of 66. His death, the result of complications from cancer, occurred shortly after he had been hospitalized with pneumonia. Mustakas' passing marked the end of an era for Greek theater and film, where his unique ability to blend humor with heartfelt emotion had made him a household name. His death, though natural, came at a time when Greek cultural identity was undergoing a transformation. As globalization increasingly influenced regional media, Mustakas stood as a cherished relic of a more intimate, locally rooted entertainment era, one that had celebrated wit, satire, and resilience amid political upheavals. Having lived through the turbulence of Cyprus's division and Greece's shifting post-war political landscape, Mustakas often embodied characters that were humorous yet tragic, playful yet philosophical, reflecting the survivalist humor of Mediterranean life. The immediate aftermath of his death was a national outpouring of grief. Tributes poured in from across the Greek-speaking world, including from political leaders, artists, and fans who had grown up with his work. Mustakas's role in international productions like Zorba the Greek also extended his reach, linking Greek cultural narratives to broader global audiences. His passing didn't merely sadden, it reminded a generation of a form of storytelling deeply connected to their roots, and perhaps in danger of being forgotten. While his death did not alter the trajectory of world history, it did amplify his legend within Greek cultural memory. Mustakas became not just a comedian or actor, but a symbol of endurance through laughter. His roles often mocked authoritarianism, bureaucracy, and social pretense, core elements in a country that had weathered dictatorship and revolution. Mustakas is immortalized through the films, television shows, and stage plays he left behind. His likeness appears in Greek retrospectives, theater tributes, and academic discussions about the role of satire in resistance. His passing reminds us that mortality is not just an end, but a punctuation mark in a story that continues through memory and art. Humanity's need to remember figures like Mustakas is rooted in our longing to preserve the wit and wisdom that made hardship bearable and even laughable. Through his work, Sotyus Mustakas still brings light, reminding us that in humor there is resilience, and in remembrance there is life. Wilhelm II, the last German emperor and king of Prussia, died on June 4, 1941, in exile in the Netherlands. His death was natural, the result of a pulmonary embolism, and it came at a moment when the world was engulfed in the turmoil of World War II, a war shaped in part by the political consequences of his reign. By the time of his death, Wilhelm had been dethroned for over 2 decades, having abdicated in 1918 at the end of World War I. His quiet passing in Dorn, far from the throne he once held, mirrored the collapse of the imperial world order and the profound transformations of the early 20th century. Wilhelm's fall from power marked the end of the Hohenzollern monarchy and reflected the broader decline of European monarchies following the devastation of the First World War. His role in the war's origins remains debated, but his militarism, nationalism, and erratic diplomacy certainly helped fan the flames. The values of his era, imperial pride, military dominance, and divine right, were starkly undermined by the horrors of trench warfare and the political revolutions that followed. His death, occurring as Hitler's Nazi regime was at the height of its power, carried a bitter historical irony. The Kaiser had once embodied German might, only to be replaced by a darker, more radical force. The immediate consequences of Wilhelm's death were minimal in political terms. He had become a marginal figure, largely forgotten or dismissed by the Nazi leadership. However, his death did spark reflection among monarchists and historians, who debated his legacy and the path Germany had taken after his abdication. His passing did not so much shift the course of history as underscore how far Europe had moved from the imperial past. Wilhelm II's legacy is complex, viewed by some as a symbol of doomed arrogance and by others as a tragic figure overwhelmed by modern forces he could not control. His image has appeared in documentaries, literature, and scholarly works, often as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and nationalistic fervor. In death, Wilhelm II reminds us that leaders, no matter how grand their titles, are not immune to the tides of change. Humanity's need to remember such figures, whether to revere, condemn, or understand them, reflects our deep connection to the forces that shape history. We immortalize them to learn, to warn, and sometimes to forgive.